The other day, 18 of our favorite childhood ballplayers got busted running a $4 million healthcare fraud. Among those arrested were six-time all-defensive player Tony Allen and his wife, all-time great dunker Shannon Brown, big baby Glenn Davis, former five-star high school recruit Sebastian Telfair, the Kobe stopper Ruben Patterson, former Piston Will Bynum, and maybe most importantly of all, Knuckleheads podcast host Darius Miles. This time, it looks like the ones to first bust his ass were the police. The Knuckleheads podcast by Darius Miles and Quentin Richardson is arguably the most popular basketball podcast out there, with their episodes being uploaded to a channel with over 600,000 subscribers, and with many of their episodes amassing over 1 million views. Now, unless Richardson finds a co-host or Miles finds the greatest judge in human history, the show's future is in big-time jeopardy. For a podcast that frequently features NBA legends like Shaq, Kevin Durant, Julius Erving, and Allen Iverson, sometimes it was strange when a smaller name like Glenn Davis or even the random Will Bynum would find a spot on the podcast. Well, now we know why these random players were invited. They were working with Miles to steal millions from people. These episodes now look cryptic as hell, with the three of them engaging in lighthearted discussions, all while knowing they're criminals on the run. The ringleader behind this crime was allegedly NBA bust Terence Williams, the 11th pick of the 2009 draft, who only lasted a measly 4 seasons in the league. He would demand that the other 17 players create fraudulent voicemail messages and doctor's letters, requesting that the NBA pay back these players a certain amount of money for surgeries, dentist appointments, and chiropractor visits that never actually happened. And so, these players received healthcare money to help pay off the medical bills, except there were no medical bills to pay off, essentially meaning that they got free money. Although most of these players were never legendary enough to cement strong legacies of their own, many of them played crucial roles in the stories of other NBA legends. When asked who the toughest defender he ever had to go up against was, Bryant quickly responded, quote, "Tony Allen, easy. Shannon Brown won 2 championships alongside Kobe, and was the only person to ever crack Kobe's serious persona, which he did on this highlight, where the Mamba just lets it all loose. Kobe had been on the Knuckleheads podcast. Glenn Davis called him, quote, a brother for life. A man by the name of Chris Douglas Roberts, who was also arrested in this fraud case, received high praise from the Black Mamba during his time with the Lakers, and Ruben Patterson would have been nothing if not for his iconic nickname, the Kobe stopper. So many of these players meant so much to Kobe Bryant that for many of us fans, these people served as flawless, lifeless pieces to a beautiful puzzle that was Kobe Bryant's NBA career, all playing a small role in what made him great. But now, they have formed their own identities as criminals. This news would have left Kobe heartbroken, and it's disappointing that these men were never truly inspired by the Mamba's praise and words of advice. Even after his tragic passing in 2020, these players kept on scamming the NBA for years later. For many of us outsiders, it's difficult to comprehend how multi-millionaires like these would want to risk it all just for some more millions. And although I am fairly confident that some of these guys have blown their millions, we all know that guys like Darius Miller have that podcast money pouring in, and even Shannon Brown has a brother who is currently in the NBA producing the family millions. Not all of these players were broke and desperate. For some, they were simply raised in an environment where crime was normal, and even once their talent on the hardwood allowed them to escape this lifestyle, many were unable to shake the habits of their old selves. At the very same time he's being charged in this healthcare fraud, Sebastian Telfair is facing other completely unrelated charges for a time in 2019 when an officer found 3 loaded handguns, a semi-automatic rifle, and a bulletproof vest in his car. But for others, their background had nothing to do with it. This crime was simply simply a result of human nature at play. The human mind struggles a lot with how to handle successes of the past. Oftentimes, success in the past is interpreted by our brain not as something positive, but rather as a failure to continue to succeed in the present. Let's say you get a 100 on a test, and then for the rest of the year, all you get on all your other exams is around the mid-80s. If this happens, your brain will not reflect upon the school year happy that you once got a 100, it will instead be disappointed with how you failed to live up to your past successes, with each of your lower test scores proving to yourself that that 100 was a fluke. Even though your grade benefits from that 100 being there, mentally, you'd likely think better of your mid-80s test scores if that first test had never even happened at all. This way of thinking is very irrational. Ideally, we could just be happy that the success happened at all, but it's also simply natural. These washed NBA players at one point in their lives were earning tens of millions of dollars every year, but all that success was in the past, and therefore their inability to generate that same amount of money in the present meant that their brain registered themselves as failures. Thus, their lust for more only grew the farther and farther they fell down this midlife crisis, eventually motivating them to steal millions to try and convince themselves that the primes of their lives still weren't over. The validation that successes of the past bring only lasts so long before they turn into nothing more than a reminder of what you once were. People who have everything still lust for more, because once you get a taste of the money and power, you develop a craving, and that craving can never be satisfied. Thank you all for watching. Let me know in the comments who you'd want to see fill in for Darius Miles on the Knuckleheads podcast. And with that, as always, stay safe out there.